Yes. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me? Ali?
أنا سامعك كويس. حلو. It's good.
One minute and we're going to start. So. Right. So it's a great privilege to have you all here today to kick off our Sociology and Anthropology conversation series in the School of Khas, Department of Anthropology. It's an incredible delight that I have to say that our beginning is with Jun and Douwe, who are going to be with us today to talk about agrarian politics. And particularly, I think the flyer tells it all. Land politics. The key word, no trespassing. So that actually marks for us a very critical moment in how we think about land politics, land grabs, land rush, how it relates to the environment, how it relates to agrarian transformations. What do we do with all of these things that are happening in our lives that we might think that living in an urban center, we are far away, distant, immune. Very concrete example. What's this? Vegetables. Do you grow them at home? Where do you get them?
Lands. Lands.
Grocery store. Where do the grocery store get them from?
Lands.
Land. So we're talking about a very intricate relationship between what we consume on an everyday basis as we don't even think about it. And questions about land, questions about labor, questions about commodities, questions of who has access, questions about what happens when actually in Jordan right now, dry climate has meant that the dams large sizes of land and completely without water, and decades old trees are literally gone. Harvests gone. Lands being taken. Dispossession can take so many different forms. We're seeing the most brutal dispossession in Palestine right now. Dispossession with genocide and killing. But it is also about making life impossible through agriculture, through the environment, not only through dead bodies, but from the effect of the militarization campaign that is taking place. So we cannot actually look at any one part of the world in separation from the others. They require us to be very careful about where do we want to look, how do we want to see the connections, how do we actually have the possibility of saying enough. Scholar activism, of which you is a great example. You have taught us all how our academic intellectual work is not separate from our commitment to actually the larger questions of our world. I cannot be a committed scholar and see the world fall apart and just decide to. It's too rough, too bothersome, too complicated. Thank you for having taught us that lesson. And thank you for being with us. Jun is one of the key scholars in agrarian studies. Journal of Peasant Studies for 15 years. When I started as an undergraduate, we were reading that journal excessively because Nicholas Hopkins is one of the agrarian scholars in Egypt, would not let anybody, not literally, go volume after volume of that journal. Thank you. You are with the ISS, the Institute in The Hague. It's brilliant to have you with us. Jun has a series of publications that if you click online to figure out what his contributions to scholarship and to life is, you will need a week. You press and it tells you, turn to the next page. You press and it tells you, turn to the next page. The next page is endless. The only thing I can say, and this is the quote unquote the academic impact factor ranking, Scopus, Elsevier, and they call it, sorry for my language, that's not my language, that's IT language or informatics language, 83 published articles, 64 book chapters, 22 edited books, 18 books, and then they have this ambiguous category, 52 more. And you can only imagine what the more will constitute. I can go on about what you will experience with Jun, but I think it's much better to leave him talk to you. All I want to say is it's beyond my dream to have had you here with us today. At the same time, I cannot not profusely thank Dwayne for being with us, to agree to actually take us through a conversation through Jun's work with regard to land, politics, agrarian transformations. It's like we are constantly in a bubble of ideas that will keep moving you. And the best part of it is to think with it rather than to actually take it given. Think with them, use the opportunity to be able to do it. I think one of the things beside agrarian studies and activism that brings you two together is the Agrarian University in China, where both of you are connected. Yun, I'm going to pronounce it very wrongly, so Dwayne, the University of Wageningen?
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Wow. I was like, how would I ever pronounce that name? But we got it right. He's an emeritus professor there. So thank you both very much. What made this possible also is Amr Khaif, a dear old friend, environmentalist, taught me about Egypt and energy and 19th century more than ever wanted to learn. Egypt Ignited is a book that I teach in my classes. I wish I could actually kidnap him, but we are told this is illegal, although everything illegal is happening in the world, so we can live with that too. So Amr actually is the point of mediation in bringing fantastic two scholars to the SOAN Conversation series. Thank you, Amr.
Thank you, Hanan.
Would you like to?
Yes, I have a very quick word, and then I will leave the floor for Jun and then douwe. So we just to clarify, what are these things on the table and where they come from? So Jan and Yun were very grateful you're here in Egypt, but they didn't come on their own. Scholar activism. We also have two dear friends with us, Ali, who is the coordinator of SIYADA Network, the food sovereignty network in the Arab region. He coordinates that, and you can think about it as a little bit like La Via Campesina, or related to it in some ways. We also have Saber, who is from the Middle East Department at the Transnational Institute, this is where also Jun is affiliated as an associate. So Transnational Institute is a place among many where Jun practices his activism, or scholar activism. So these books, the three books in Arabic, are what we have produced so far in a series called ICAS. It's about writing small books with big ideas, and they are all related mostly to peasant studies, food systems, food regime, by experts in the field, like Henry Bernstein, douwe here, Philip McMahon. We have produced three of them in Arabic so far, with SIYADA's support and TNI's and a bunch of other entities. You can find them, the logos on the back cover. We also have one publication by TNI, which happens to be related to Egypt. So feel free to take as much copies as you want from these after Jun's.
Free books are not an everyday occurrence. There is a market that says you have to pay loads of dollars to get them, so you make advantage.
And the good thing is the English copies are also available open access. Just Google ICAS small books, ICAS, you'll find them. Jun, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. That was slightly embarrassed by a very generous introduction. So thank you so much for that, and very warm welcome that we received here. AUC has always been a reference point to me, at least for a very long time, since I started to be accidentally stuck in academia as a key intellectual hub in the MENA region. And I've known so many very cutting edge and respected world-renowned scholars associated with the AUC. So for the first time, Jan and I were here in Egypt, both for us, our first time to be here. So we're very, very excited about our experience here. And here I am in this probably the most beautiful classroom I've ever been to, ever, in any place in the world. So it's like, wow, can I have a classroom like this kind of thing? So it's so thank you so much for having us here. Thank you very much. My talk today is kind of a full circle, because I'm an accidental academic, because in my previous life, still an ongoing life, I'm associated more with peasant movements, agrarian movements, rural movements that try to aspire to make the world better, more just, fairer, tender. Many of the issues here are not new issues for Egypt, like land reform, for instance, something like that. And I was part of, in the early formative years, I was part of the international peasant movement, La Via Campesina, which is today's most consequential, politically speaking, rural social movements, one of rural social movement globally. So it's more of like coming, and then I got stuck in academia, and but never left the movement in a lot of ways. Continued to accompany them. But then my talk today is more of like the different ways in which different knowledge holders and knowledge makers see different concepts and practice in the world and use different terms and accordingly different meanings. And so my sharing today is basically a very simple, almost descriptive kind of argument that there are keywords that guide on how we see the world and our ideas on how to change it into something better. But those keywords are politically contested. And those contestations and the different meanings according to those keywords are not trivial. In fact, they are profoundly important. And I will discuss this a little later here briefly. And then the second part of my sharing, which is linked to the first part on keywords, is that how strategically important it is to clarify our understanding of the politics of keywords, especially in the context of competing and contested arena and terrain of global knowledge politics, the global circuits of knowledge production, attribution, circulation, and use, on how we see the world and how we understand the world, and how we understand the world of what was, what is, and what ought to be. The unity of the past, present, and future, as Mark Bloch, the historian Mark Bloch, and Eric Hobsbawm would put it. The histories that they studied the past, but studied the past, present, and future. And the future is not just a que sera sera, as in Spanish would say, of whatever the future would bring, but what ought to be. Is something like of an ethical reference point of a future that ought to be, with a loaded ethical point of view. That means there's a clash of different knowledges. Not only that knowledge or knowledges are plural and diverse, but they clash and they're competing. And at the heart of it is the politics of keywords. So that's my main message for my sharing here. And my base of the discussion is the one where I have been working on, is on land, the issue of land. Embarrassingly, I work in different regions of the world except in Arna, so the Arab region, and I'm completely blind. Visited now through some activist kind of work, but I'm still I admit I'm completely ignorant, and I apologize for that. So if some of the things that I say don't make sense in the context of the Arab region, please come and let me know and share. And I really wanted to learn more of that. So my context more is Southeast Asia, China, Africa, and Southern America, for some of these points that I'm going to share. So keywords are relational in social sciences. And you said, as I said here, like keywords are one of the most ubiquitous, very commonplace kind of keywords is no trespassing. It's like it's relational. It involves not only a single person, but it's embedded in social relations in society. And when it's relational, then therefore it's embedded in power relations, because social relations are in which political power emerge, are contested, and are transformed, and thus they are political. So again, my take-home point is no trespassing. Very commonplace that is being used by different people, like rich people, poor people. They use the term no trespassing, and it's very relational. No trespassing. Don't trespass my property, and addressed to others. It's an inclusion exclusion kind of social relation. So using one keyword is one thing. Understanding what it means is one thing, but enforcing it is another thing. So you can put the biggest placard in the world to put no trespassing in your in what you think is your property, but the next day you see that somebody else just trampled it and grabbed your land, and you cannot defend it. While others, when they put even a very tiny letter of no trespassing, it's like a fortress. No one can touch it. So it's how to enforce, for instance, no trespassing. Some of you would be familiar with Woody Guthrie. Anyone familiar with the folk singer in the 1940s in the United States, Woody Guthrie? A big inspiration for the music of Bob Dylan, and later of Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen even produced a huge album on the same themes that Woody Guthrie was singing. Woody Guthrie, you're familiar with the Dust Bowl. Okay, so the Dust Bowl has been documented by academics, but not only academics, but novelists like John Steinbeck, Grapes of Wrath, East of Eden, for instance. But another documentation of that is the folk singer Woody Guthrie. So he was talking about and singing about the Dust Bowl around that time. And one of the songs that he wrote was "This Land Is Your Land." It's like an anthem of many activists for many decades now in many parts of the world. And one stanza there, it says, "As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said, 'No trespassing.' But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That sign was made for you and me." So it's like, yeah, I put there, walking, there's a sign, "No trespassing." So I cannot trespass. It's now there's a claimant there. But then I look, the other side, nothing. There's nothing. Now I cannot trespass that big guy, but that big guy can trespass mine. And then and that happens over and over and over and over and over again. It's relational, and it's about power relations. And the magic, and not the magic, is the power of a keyboard, like no trespassing, and then everyone celebrates this kind of thing. Then later we will discuss many commonplace everyday terms that we almost don't think about it because we believe in it. It's like land tenure security, land tenure. It's like we celebrate it. The IPCC, everything will be all right in climate change mitigation and adaptation as long as there's land tenure security. Poor people are poor in the countryside because there is no land tenure security. How do you deal with land grabbing? Land tenure security. So it's like a universal magic word, a cure-all type of thing, land tenure security. And yet when we start to dissect its political economy, it's very much like no trespassing. It means very differently to different people, and not just random people. When we say people, not just random individuals, but people who are embedded in class and intersectional relations of social difference of race, ethnicity, gender, and generation. Keywords constantly emerge. There's no such thing as a keyword 500 years ago is the same meaning fast forward. Some are even very recent, 20 years ago, keyword this time are mean very differently. The same keyword that remain constant. But also there are keywords that are emerging, and you know that in the digital world today, suddenly there are so many every day there's like new emerging keywords. So, but that means there are subsequent renditions or meanings according to keywords, and at times the subsequent meanings are even interesting. Not only that it's interesting because it changes, but because it's interesting because we can understand through which we can understand actually history, the political economy, what happens to society, how society evolved and transformed culture and politics, because this is very much intertwined. That also means that there's no such thing as final fixed static meanings to keywords, that keywords continue to emerge. The differences that I would like to do is just I will do a very quick kind of initial thing of typology, ideal type of clustering of the different contested keywords, just to have an overview sampling way of what I was trying to say here. So first, same keywords, different meanings. This is like a complicated thing about politics. One is peasant. These three books here. The first book by Henry Bernstein, coming from a very orthodox classical Marxist political economy. For him, the third peasant, when you say peasant, peasants today, he said, doesn't exist. There are no peasants in the world today. They disappeared, but under the weight of a generalized commodification of everyday life, i.e. or AKA global capitalism. But under global capitalism, under the generalized commodification of everyday life, peasants disappeared. There are no peasants today. So book 2 by douwe ploeg celebrates that, oh, the future of this world depends on the consolidation and expansion of what he calls the new peasantries. Peasant not only exist, but they're vibrant and could be the seed for building a positive future. Like, how do we make sense of this thing? It's like they're both using peasants, but in a completely different interpretation. And both are talking about, both are anti-capitalist. Both are talking about how to build a positive future. But both are using a peasant, but in a completely different, but in completely two very different meanings. So Henry Bernstein and his group, for instance, wouldn't hear anything about peasants. They call it many different names, like petty commodity producers, PCP, or classes of labor, but never peasants. Peasants are a social category of pre-capitalist character, but because of generalized commodification, then they disappeared. Others would argue that we are not even looking at socioeconomic strictly, but as a political category, and we use peasants in different non-Anglophone languages, campesino, for instance, people from the country. How else do you translate it into in English, for instance? So this is one thing that we illustrate, that it's not an innocent difference of interpretation, but it's a major clash and profound clash of worldviews. The other one is land. And this is my central kind of interest here. Especially there are many different international conferences, whether you are interested on migration or in climate change or in politics, citizenship or geopolitics, land, it's very central to many of those. And part of the problem is that there are different interpretations of what do you mean by land? In development studies, which is my field, land is classically interpreted as a natural resource, a land that is factor of economic production. And so the measurements about land understanding is like in terms of hectareage and acreage. The idea is like it's a resource. So land equals farmland. A block of farmland. Land equals a rangeland or pastoralist. Or land as a homeland in a productive sense. For a very long time, up to now in development studies, when we talk about land, land is almost always treated in the context of production. Produce commodities to build livelihoods, etc., etc., so that when you talk about land, you talk about the household, and you talk about a plot of land, farmland. Land reform, land to the tiller, block of land to the tiller. When you talk about development, you talk about productivity of that plot of land or productivity of labor used to produce out of that land. And that is very crucial and very important, at least in my field of international development studies. And that is one interpretation, enduring one, and the very dominant one up to now. Okay. An emerging interpretation of that today is triggered by the recent revival of what they call SRT, social reproduction theory, that actually means the continuous renewal of life and society is not just dependent on production, on wage labor, for instance, on paid labor, but it includes social reproduction. The production of labor, generational reproduction through care, everyday care. A worker needs a particular amount of labor power to use to work, 8-hour work in a factory making a pair of shoes, but he needs a house, a place, a bed to sleep, to rest for the night, to eat, some to wash clothes, and so on and so forth, to cook food, to wash the dishes and everything, so that the next day he wakes up, he has this, at least he has the same level of labor power to be able to go back to the factory and work 8 hours again to earn an 8-hour a day wage. So the idea is that actually production and social reproduction, are inseparable. There's no such thing as two spheres that are separate. But still in the dominant sense, the more productive side is the more like also associated with paid, formal, visibilized part of reproduction of life and society. So in censuses, you will see output, the work made on the farmland, how many hectares of land, output of that, how many person hours used to that, how many person hours worked by workers, how much wage, etc. But there's no such thing as the census that includes how many children's shirts were washed by mothers last year in Egypt, how many skirts of school girls were ironed by mothers and daughters last year. But there's no such thing as that. But we know that reproduction of life is not possible without those. How many plates were washed by mothers and daughters last year? Oh, there's no such thing as that. But we know that is it possible to reproduce life without those? And most of that is unwaged, invisibilized labor by women in the household, mothers and daughters. So a lot of that is the whole kind of move to the discussion of unified spheres of production and social reproduction. Now, my movement here is going into understanding of land. So, as I said, for a very long time, we say land is in production, so in farmland. Do you have land? No. Do you have land? Yes, I have 1 hectare of farmland. But then if you ask, what do you do? How do you do your livelihood? Then we say it's layers of access to land and nature guarantee the continuous renewal of life and society. They needed access to playgrounds for children. Public space, that's land access. Access to the riverbed for water, for laundry, for water, for petty irrigation, access to spring water, access to a community forest, to be able to have access to firewood, for instance. There are many different. It's actually a web of access, different layers of different gradation that guarantees renewal of life, and farmland is one of those. Definitely very important, almost central to many, but not the only one. Okay, so it's layers. So actually, in most peasant societies, pastoralist societies, in riparian communities, fishers, farmers, land is always understood and used by ordinary rural working people as land in production and social reproduction. It doesn't make sense for them to just say land in production. Doesn't make sense. So it's always in that context. And if we see that, then a plot of land doesn't make much sense, but it's more about understanding it as landscape. So the work of cultural Marxist Don Mitchell, for instance, of Lund, is quite important in understanding this sense. So even when we talk about land, even among land political economists, they would have a very different understanding of that. Now, if you move different intellectual traditions, even more become very important. Neoclassical economics would understand land in a very different kind of way. Land is a scarce resource for economic production, and it should be put in the hands of those who are actually and potentially efficient producers and users of land. Almost always measured in economic growth, monetary terms. So very different. So I'm investing a lot of time there because again, that is a very central kind of discussion of what land means. So in the end, land is a soil, farmland is a wasteland, but land is an agroecological zone, and landscape, land is a homeland and territory for many. Okay, so that's the other one is that same keywords, opposite meanings. Like, how did that happen? We were talking about the same thing, but very different meanings, like land reform. You have a fascinating, one of the most significant land reforms in history of the world is in Egypt. But that idea of land reform that existed here decades ago, and that if you talk about every year, there is a land conference in Washington, D.C. convened by the World Bank. And central to that is land reform. That started like 20 years ago. But the meaning of land reform, the classical meaning of land reform is redistributing big private estates to landless and near landless peasants. That's the classical understanding of land reform. Today, one of the most important advocates of land reform is the World Bank. And their understanding is land reform is the reallocation of land inefficiently under inefficient production used by inefficient users to efficient land users and land use. That is it could be a corporation, it could be a rich individual, it could also be a small peasant. The bottom line is economic efficiency in neoclassical economics definition. So my interest here is because in February of 2026, there would be like almost like a UN summit on land reform. It's called the International Conference. It's by the UN. International Conference on Agrarian Reform and Rural Development plus 20. Plus 20 because the last time was 20 years ago in Porto Alegre in Brazil. And this next year, it will be in Cartagena in Colombia. So it's a major gathering. And it's very important for social movements like Via Campesina to be in that space to push for democratization of the politics of land. But then governments and international institutions are all saying that, yes, we support the land reform and we are all going there. But then we understand that, well, they are all supporting land reform, but different understanding of what it means. Not only different understanding, but actually complete opposite of understanding of land reform. They always think that smallholder agriculture is not that efficient, so that land should be reallocated, not going to small peasants, but to actually to capitalist producers. So how do we start and how do we break into spaces like that if we don't have the basic understanding of the politics of keywords? The other one is different keywords, common meaning, attribution, attributed and conflated. People use different terms, but the assumption is that we are talking about the same thing. And the example here is large-scale land investments, land grabs, land rush. Those are three keywords that have been so popular the last 20 years when the global land grabbing exploded worldwide. It's estimated that up to 250 million hectares of land worldwide have been grabbed. Egypt was some Egyptian companies were implicated in some in Sudan or in Mali, for instance, 15 years ago. But people are using different terms, assuming that they know what they are talking about. So yes, we are talking about how the Saudi company went to Mali and captured 100,000 hectares of land there. So they describe it as land grabs, large-scale land investments. But then the political keywords is that this conflation, they conflate actually different keywords that ought to have different definitions. Large-scale land investments is, by the very term of it, is about scale. It's almost like politically neutral. It's a technical description of how big or how small the investment is. Land grab is a very loaded term. It's like it's very political. It emphasizes the political nature of that. Land rush is pertaining to the madness, the frenzy, the madness, the hyperbole. It's like if you watch old black and white movies of the California gold rush of the mid-19th century, and the cowboys and all the fortune hunters going all the way to California, and the madness of that it created. That's a frenzy. That's a rush. The grand rush of the 19th century, when everyone was rushing to the coast of Peru to mine bird shit to sustain the industrial agriculture production in North Atlantic agriculture. That's a rush. It's like some madness kind of rush. So what happened there is a rush. But again, if we are looking at that, people are conflating, but different phenomena. And it doesn't help much in the understanding of the actually existing realities. The other one is food security, food sovereignty. Some people agree that, well, we are talking about the same thing, but they're using different terms. Some are using it food security, others are using it food sovereignty. They think that they are talking about, and in fact, they are talking about the same thing at times, but they are using different terms that are actually potentially very different. There are catch-all keywords that doesn't help much, and it creates a lot of problem, like agrarian reform, or in Spanish, reforma agraria. Some so powerful social movements, they thought that the problem is landlessness and undemocratic distribution of land in the world, whether in Latin America, the Caribbean, in the MENA region, in Africa or Asia, or in fact also in North America and in Europe. And the solution is agrarian reform, or powerful movements, social movements in Latin America would say the solution is reforma agraria. We know what they mean. It means democratizing access to land. But these terms, using a catch-all terms politically doesn't help much. In many places in Africa, they stay away from the term agrarian reform, not because that they don't have a issue on land. They have a lot of issues about land, but it's not about redistributing big private estates to landless peasants. So it's not reform agrarian. In Europe today, the rapid and wide reconcentration of land is scary. There's a reconcentration of land under the hands of many of them are what can now term food empire, for instance. So peasants there have a lot, farmers there have a lot of issues on land. But if you use reforma agraria or agrarian reform as a banner storyline, it's like it will draw a blank. If you use that in Netherlands in 2025, it will draw a blank. It doesn't mean that they don't have an issue for democratizing land. They have, but the catch-all words don't gain much traction. Negative keywords. There are keywords that are inherently negative. They have been constructed historically and deployed historically as a negative, like agrarian populism. It has a whole history in the second half of the 19th century Russia between Leninist would-be followers of Lenin and those who are looking at the possibility that constructing a positive socialist future beyond capitalism actually could be built from remaining peasant communes. And the would-be followers of Lenin started to pull them in a very negative way as agrarian populists. During those times, late 19th century, including especially during Stalin's time, to be branded as agrarian populist is very dangerous. Many were killed just because they were labeled as agrarian populist. But up to now, in my field, in critical agrarian studies, in our field in douwe, if you are labeled as agrarian populist, that is the most insult that you can get from Orthodox Marxists or the self-appointed inheritors of Leninist version, or at least the way they interpret Lenin. It's a term that is meant to devalue and to demean and to dismiss. It's a very negative one. So Henry Bernstein would call Yenday Wanderbrooks agrarian populist. That is very derogatory. That is an insult word. So we see a lot of that. It's a loaded thing. And then as a critical social science researchers, we problematize. We don't take as unproblematic some of the terms, of the keywords that are loaded. Agrarian populist as always reactionary, for instance. Backward romantic reactionaries. Emerging keywords we see a lot today. And again, they are reflection of the evolving cultures and politics in the world today. Degrowth, agro-extractivism, agrarian climate justice, and many more ecological unequal exchange. So we were talking about embeddedness in power relations when the rich and powerful in corporations, in society, but also in academia, deploy terms and accorded meaning to it. It's loaded. It shapes ideas, and if uncontested, it can become hegemonic. No one will force you to take the interpretation of a particular word, but then you started to believe it without being coerced. So the influence could become hegemonic. The terms like land tenure security, as interpreted in neoclassical economic terms or in neoliberal terms, has become hegemonic. So you read all IPCC reports. Okay, we have a lot of problems and we need climate action. And many of the climate change mitigation nature-based solutions, NBS, had resulted in green grabbing or land grabbing. But no worries. There's a solution to that as long as we ensure that there's land tenure security. It's like, what is land tenure security? It's like we give formal peasants where indigenous were expelled from their land with a RED Plus project because they didn't have title to their lands. So the solution is land tenure security comes in the form of giving them formal land rights in a title. The next day, when they receive the title, they even lost the land even faster because of the title of the land. So it's reducing the question of land tenure and security, which is deeply political, in the context of formalizing kind of a piece of paper of a title. So it's that kind of could be scary, and how we participate in that hegemonic, counter-hegemonic buildup of keywords. Sometimes we might not be conscious of our own participation in reproducing oppressive keywords. Like, we need land rights. The solution to all these problems is land rights, land tenure security, through land rights, through land titles. Because the problem is a lack of land titles. Like, how can that be the problem and not the capitalism as the problem? For instance, so it forces us to think more critically, deeper than some of the very powerful hegemonic kind of keywords deployed today, and they permeated very influential and powerful institutions and spaces in which we discuss, or supposed to discuss, how to build a future that is more just, fairer, and kinder. Negotiations in the conference with the parties, drafting of reports of IPCC reports, COP30 in Belém, in Brazil, 2 months from now, ICAS in 2026 in Cartagena. These ones, if we are not careful with the keywords, we actually help reproduce the power imbalances in this way. This is the reason why we just produced 2 months ago this book called Essential Concepts of Land Politics. basically clarifying many of the different contested concepts here. So this is the book is like a self-promotional kind of book. This is a book that here, in which we elaborated more on the politics of keywords in relationship to land and critical agrarian studies. That is also very important for social movements to have clarity. The other work that we just published this year is the Oxford Handbook of Land Politics. Here we elaborated a lot on land in production and social production. And so land is a soil, farmland, rangeland. Land is a landscape, agroecological zone. Land is a homeland and territory, all of the above. And we might be able to bring in a lot of people who would agree that, yes, it is. And yet disagree on how to understand those baskets, because they come from very different intellectual tradition. Henry Bernstein would agree that, yes, I agree. It's soil, production, social production. Then Douwe van der Ploeg would agree, yes, that is land in production and social production. But the two of them will be on the opposite sides of the fence on how they understand actually how it unfolds in the meanings and the significance of land in production and social reproduction. And we are just talking about of two. Henry, representing Orthodox Leninist interpretation of Marx, and Douwe, representing a different way of looking at it from the Chayanovian tradition that is not completely opposed to what Marx was saying, actually. But then, as we explained in this handbook, if we go more, then there are different intellectual traditions that offer a very compelling interpretation of what land in production and social production means. So the anarchist tradition is a very different, compelling explanation of world ecology and post-structuralist. So how do they all of that? So how do we position on according meanings to that? This is again part of how we understand and how we part of the reasons why we produce these three books now. These three books is part of an international series to help democratize knowledge. The idea is if we want to understand the classical Orthodox Marxist explanation of agrarian change, but I don't have time to read 100 articles and 5 books. Can someone summarize it in a very small book in written in an accessible manner so that we can we have somewhere to start? So that's the idea of the book series. It's like, what do you mean Chayano? I've never heard about Chayano. What's the whole story? Can you summarize it in one little book? So that's the story of this one. So Orthodox Marxism, Chayanovian, the theory of food regime, the livelihoods approach, and so on and so forth. So we produced already 12 volumes in this series, and the idea is that they are written in an accessible manner and produced in different languages. The Arabic edition is the 14th language edition. So we are now in 14 language editions. Yeah.
I was going to ask, how many languages do you have?
14.
Yeah.
14. So it's amazing. It's a lot of that is that, and I will come to a shorter version of my concluding, to conclude the shorter version of my second part of my talk. The take-off point is coming from social movements. The idea is that the English edition are all open access. It's available in paperback if you want. If you are among those who, like me, who are have difficulty reading books online or on a small iPhone, and I use conventional one with my paperback. Then you can buy a paperback, but you can also download all English editions. We aspire to produce more Arabic edition, but at least we have the first three books now. The context is that the global knowledge politics is we can produce radical ideas, brilliant progressive ideas, and we do produce brilliant radical ideas that are important for emancipatory movements. But we produce them in deeply and profoundly undemocratic institutional settings. And by producing them, we also help reproduce those undemocratic institutions and relations in the global circuits of knowledge production, attribution, circulation, and use. So scholar activism, we said, is a tradition that tries to interpret the world in very rigorous ways and in various ways, to paraphrase Marx, but not only to interpret them, but in order to change them. But not only to change them in any random way, but to change them into something better. And that something better is to build a society that is more just, fairer, and kinder, with the working people as a reference, ethical reference point. Scholar activism aspires to change the world out there into something better. But not only that, they also, at the same time, so while the political trenches, the battlefield is out there in society, at the same time, universities and academia, or the institutions of making knowledge and circulating knowledge and using knowledge, is also considered as a political trench, a battlefield that we need to democratize and transform into something better than what it is now. And we see that axis of undemocraticness in many different ways. I'm always one foot with social movements, and even in knowledge politics, it's more of like, it's not enough to say that knowledge or knowledges are plural and diverse, which most people would agree. Of the plurality and diversity of knowledges, and that we have to respect that. But then many academia-based knowledge makers would still look at it from a vertical hierarchy. Yes, we are all plural, but some knowledge are more privileged and more important than others. And almost always it happens that academic knowledge is the only one that is considered scientific, and others are lesser value. Here, scholar activism takes the diversity and plurality in a horizontal kind of way. They are different, but they are of equal value. But they are different. They play different roles. So the ideas of pastoralists or peasants are important and very different from the knowledge produced in academia. It's not about which is more important, but it's about how those two create a mosaic of knowledge that could be together as a mosaic of knowledge, transform the world into something better. And here it's important to go back to those keywords and understand those keywords and participate in the political contestations in according meanings to keywords in this context, because we look at the meaning giving of keywords in these broader circuits of knowledge politics. We see that potentially there is always an alliance of progressive academics, social movement activists, and independent NGOs and researchers to forge an alliance for movement-driven kind of knowledge work. So it's a knowledge coalition, but they're a very tiny one. And they're almost like peripheral in terms of power relations, because the dominant power in knowledge politics and knowledge coalitions are those produced through academic and big capital alliance, academic, capital, state, big corporate philanthropy alliances. Like think about Bill Gates and all that they the research that they produce. Think about the big fossil companies.
Is what you're talking about here related to think tanks or also applicable to some research papers published by universities themselves?
Universities and papers by universities are all located in this way.
Yeah.
And it depends on how you will interpret where they are. It's not a clear cut black or white or a clear zones here and there with a clear boundary. They're porous and very much a grayish kind of area. What I'm saying here is more of like an ideal, typical heuristic tool for us to understand on how dynamics of knowledge coalitions emerge and clash with each other here. That however we want to do something different, we cannot just do as we please. Because actually the dominant institutions and structures of knowledge politics and different coalitions are much more powerful in many ways, in that sense. So scholar activism as a tradition is very tiny and politically almost insignificant. But hey, many of the things that led to cataclysmic positive revolutions in the history of humanity started from being politically insignificant and tiny. And we have to build from somewhere, and it's always about coalition building. And the idea here is that I'm just putting it back to my beginning that the keywords seems to be harmless. But if we look at it from this context and the politics of contesting knowledge, then actually they become profound reflection of the given and existing structures and institutions and the political dynamics in global knowledge circles. Yes.
Relating to the point about think tanks and universities or institutions, most of the knowledge produced in most of the knowledge production cases are influenced through actual funding. Now, nobody can actually produce knowledge independently. So how can we claim that this knowledge is independent and subjective if the funding is what actually directed this knowledge into this specific direction?
Well, very important question asked in the context of a seminar in AUC. I'm not very familiar with the structure of funding of AUC. I'm familiar with the structure of funding in the Netherlands, where my university is. For a very long time, well, up to now, it's a public. The character of funding is crucial. We understand the structures and institutions. We don't have to go into the 1+1 question in a very reductionist kind of way, because there are many contingencies that happen too. There are some fundings that come from corporate philanthropy that could be used actually against those interests of those big corporations in the end. So it's not that crude kind of way, but still, where funding comes from are a crucial way of looking at how alliances, what kinds of agendas are being produced and why. So when a science foundation says that okay, we allocate 20 million euros today for research grants and we call for applications, but it will be about how to secure supply chain of organic vegetables from Northern Africa supplied to the supply chain of the Netherlands. 20 million euros. We invest in that, 4 projects, 5 million each. So that's how the Dutch money now is being organized since about 3 or 4 years ago. That is a very clear kind of influence. Less and less today, including the European Research Council remains a little bit more liberal, but it's being encroached with that kind of approach. That it's already being tied. The course for scientific research is tied, particular corporate interest. The rise of the far right in the Netherlands has dismantled so many of the social democratic legacies in terms of running state universities and institutions. For a very long time, my institute was founded on the fact that it's part of development aid from 1952 up to December 2 years ago. It runs through because of Dutch government scholarships for MA and PhD. The far-right government killed those programs. Completely.
Now.
So completely. I am a product of that program. My MA and my PhD in the Netherlands was from that was killed. Then my institute might shut down a few years from now. So funding, as you were saying, in this thing is crucial. Now, what do we do as researchers, as a part of this community? That's what I'm saying. That we want to create a world, a better world, and often we see the world as outside, out there, and the political tensions out there, and scholar activism is to change the world out there. But sometimes we forget that actually the battlefield is in here as well, just as important, and we need to transform the very institution and structure in which global circuits of knowledge politics have reproduced knowledges that are actually deeply undemocratic. So it's it's a small initiative that to start, but I think we need to start from somewhere. And having a conversation like this one is a very important start.
As we're having a conversation, may I invite you to eat and break so that you have energy to converse more and to think about how do we make actually the initiative, because I think this is very important and it speaks to wherever we are. No one else is immune from that. So as we are listening and conversing, please help yourself. So that's why I need that noise. I apologize.
There are many problems in the global south, especially for young researchers like you and early career researchers or even mid-career researchers like Yasmin, that you might not feel because you are in AUC. Very privileged portrait of
Trust me, it's very privileged.
it's relative terms. Everything is relative. But if you are talking about Gambela University in Ethiopia compared to AUC, you can compare in terms of funding and money, and you say how you generate knowledge and how you compete with knowledge. Your subscription to journals, I'm sure
They did a lot of cutting in that.
That's
In the summer, they cut most of the big journals, going Taylor and the books. Taylor Fancy, it's cut to the movie packs. It used to be really good, but now it's less.
but that's even relative. Can you imagine Gambela University?
Yeah.
So it's a hierarchy of something, yeah.
But I think my point here is, if we think that we are privileged and this is not the fight that we should have,
Yeah.
that's a mistake. This is happening everywhere.
But this is even amazing that even if AUC feels that they are even pressed hard also, then it's really telling us that the situation is really bad
It's really bad.
globally.
That, I mean, the example that one of our colleagues here just gave now about online resources and books and the library, which is any institution of higher learning should have. we had this summer when we were all on vacation. These were cut.
That's scary.
Try to log online to your online research platforms, you will not have access.
That's scary. Yeah. But yeah,
I want to ask, what is that like? My knowledge of this might be very limited, but what's an autonomous research institution? Does this insinuate a lack of bias? From what I understand from this chart, that the closer it is to the center, the less biased, the more what the academic actually believes. The further away is sort of like you're insinuating rich person going to a scholar and telling him, please find evidence for this, because if you find evidence for this, I'm gonna make money and I'll make sure you make money. That's what I understand. But what is it?
this is a scheme. This is a scheme. A schema is to simplify very complex. Okay, so and there are many overlapping shades here. It's a gray area. It's more about that. I wanted to specify that grassroots social movements is different from NGOs, for instance. They have ally NGOs that are not grassroots based, maybe with a board and with 25 staff members who do research in support of social movements. But this is not research institutions like part of CGIAR, like IFPRI, that is funded through combination of big corporations and governments. Example of this one is that in Brazil, you have this famous peasants social movement called MST. They have an accompanying ally called CPT. It's like a church-based kind of NGO that has always been supporting MST's struggle. So I would say MST here and CPT here, that they also have one another. Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
Okay, so your talk has given us a very clear sense of the relationship between knowledge production and power. Fantastic. And I was just wondering, because it all feels a bit like a zero-sum game. You know, in the end, we say that there's an uphill battle, you know, and the powers that be have made capitalism into a natural capacity for the human being. And so, you know, economic processes, agrarian processes, family processes, all processes now subscribe to the capitalist logic. Yeah? So my question to you is, because the world looks like that now, and because everything you've said about this uphill battle, I'm interested in the agrarian movements themselves and the extent to which I mean, we're given the impression that we're in a post-ideological age. So do people in agrarian movements also think of themselves as stakeholders who are having to sort of hedge their bets or negotiate? Do they, I mean, for example, in the context that I'm most familiar with, the British working class has been turned into a capitalist working class. So they don't have a sense of their sort of class consciousness anymore, and they reproduce sort of not just far right, but extremely sort of ideas about how society and the economy should run, but in the end are not in their favor. So with the agrarian movements and with the sort of consensus around language and the power of all of that language, is there still ideology in those movements that's sort of an alternative to the logic that's dominant, the hegemonic logic that we speak of? Or is it moving more in the direction of also talking about, you know, talking about agrarianism in the language of contemporary capitalism?
Yeah, a very important point. And at some point very soon, we have to call Yan Douwe to help me out here by giving comments on, because your questions are very much Yan Douwe could much better handle those. One of is that to start off is that a generalized commodification of everyday life is a very uneven process across space and time. Some people would use the metaphor of a Swiss cheese. You have the whole Swiss cheese, but there are many hollow parts inside. It's like capitalism, and you still see a lot of spaces that are in which capitalist relations are very weak or even nearly absent in those spaces. And some of those spaces, not because capitalism is not as fast and as brutal in those spaces, but because those were spaces of struggles. Exactly. So here are some fascinating work of Yandawe over many years, like markets. Not all markets are capitalist markets. There are also non-capitalist markets created by communities, with peasants, and everything. Peasants. There are three centers. When we say organized peasants today, there are three centers of gravity in the world. One is a far-right, very influential far-right farmer association organization. And the global expression of that is the World Farmers Organization, WFO, in which many of the powerful farmers in Europe that mobilize and continue to mobilize with their tractors and etc. And allied with big agro capital are actually allied with. So their demands are very much allied with the interest of big capital, but they are farmers. Many of them are medium and even small farmers. It's not only the large farmers, but the ideological leadership and ideological moorings are very much of farmers allied with big agro capital. There's a centrist one, like liberal progressive one, in the middle, but then you have the left pole. It's Via Campesina, and then this alliance called IPC for Food Sovereignty, which is made up of about 6,000 social movement organizations worldwide, of farmers, peasants, pastoralists, rural women, fishers, globally. Very impressive. But there, it's a coalition. So it's a pluralist coalition, broad left, but you have the more orthodox Marxist and even Leninist in there. But then you have liberal progressives there. And everything in between. So a lot of anarcho-syndicalist traditions also very significant. So ideologically, and ideological mooring is very vibrant in many of these surging movements. Ploeg, which is the Via Campesina Latin America, has a very bold kind of position. Not only that they are following Via Campesina as anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, anti-patriarchal movement, but they take it a step further. The Latin American section says that it's socialist in orientation. So ideologically, the reference point is capitalism, but the struggles are a combination of struggles within and against capitalism. Your combination of them. That brings in a lot of the contradictions that you can see, the internal kind of problems that it generates. So, but it's a good timing here. It's very unfair that you are the only ones eating, and
It's totally unfair. We need.
No, but also because
You talk, you eat.
also because one of my most important intellectual idol and reference point all my life is here. Yandawe, the great Yandawe van der Broek. And many of the questions that you will raise, I am very keen to hear, and I'm sure you will be very excited to hear what Yandawe would have to say. And
Now you are really passing the hot pepper to me, June.
That's a very good moment. How all the questions are coming.
Okay. No, in the first place, thank you. It's always an enormous intellectual pleasure to listen to the contributions of June, especially this afternoon again. And the point is clear. Synthesizing it, language generally and keywords especially are not neutral. Yes, they carry meaning, they attribute meaning and significance, but they carry specific meanings, whilst they exclude other meanings. They have specific sources, whilst other sources are made silent. Yeah, the keywords are suppressed. Then it implies that language generally and these keywords help to order the world for the good or the bad. Yeah, but specific orderings are favored, other orderings are excluded. Just through these specific keywords, the world is going in a certain direction. And keywords are contested. Yeah, all this applies. And at the same time, we all know we need also for constructing alternatives in the social movements and peasant movements, we need keywords as well. Even if we are very well aware that it are difficult tools, we need keywords as well. Now the question arises, how can we help to construct keywords that function in a democratic way, in an emancipatory way, and that help to open the windows that normally are kept closed. Yeah, how can we offer perspectives to people who do not see any future because the future has been stolen? As a beautiful expression of a Peruvian peasant leader, I remember he said, well, the Spanish and then the English and then the Germans who came here did not only grab our lands, they grabbed our future as well. And that has a very deep meaning. But the question now is, how can we construct more convincing, more justified keywords? Contextualization, June stressed that, is a very important condition. Be aware of the embeddedness in power relation is is also a key condition. Understanding universities as battlefields of knowledge, as the expression of one of my colleagues, Norman Long from England goes. Yeah, these are key conditions, but there is another key condition which is crucial, which is joint action. And I will illustrate that with a very modest example that comes from Peru. It's about land and about keywords. Keywords that at first sight seem to be impossible. It is in the Andean Mountains. I worked there for many years, and where you have peasant communities, very large and strong and vibrant peasant communities, and people there are practicing, amongst others, agriculture. But under difficult conditions, they work in an area that ranges in terms of level beyond sea from 400 meters to nearly 4,000 meters. Yeah, and normally the peasant family is having at least some 50 to 20 different plots, different fields, different pieces of land. We're talking about land. Yeah, all along this range. So they meet all kinds of different conditions. For them, it's very important to know this land because they also exchange the land. They do not sell it, but they exchange land between different families. Beyond that, the community is having a kind of spatial ordering, so they enter into new land. Now, how to know the land? And then comes the surprise. They work the land, they construct the land, and so they know it. And then they have a language. And at first sight, I was perplexed. They use binomial concepts, a kind of dichotomies, like hot or cold, low or high, red or black, dry or wheat. You more or less can understand all this. But then also more poetic terms. Land willing to give, generous land, versus hostile land, greedy land. So it goes on and on and on. They have at least some 30 of this kind of dichotomies. Now, from a scientific point of view, I've seen they operate their agronomists. They say, what a horror. This is absolutely not scientific. Because what does it say? Hot or cold? Where does cold stop and where does hot begin? It's not known. Beyond that, you cannot standardize it. You cannot quantify it. It cannot be used for planning, for land planning. So they consider it to be a monstrosity, the way these peasants talk about their land. So, and you see, these peasants, they are backwards. Even more, I remember myself walking with them through the fields, and they said, look, that field over there, down under, is far higher than this one where we are walking now. Come on. Until I understood that high or low refers to the sensitivity to frost. Yeah, high land is sensible for frost, and it depends not only on the mathematical distance to the sea, but also on being covered by neighboring hills, or being in a depression, or covered by trees, etc., or containing manure, which is eating the land. Now, what you see is that they combine these concepts. They can describe a specific piece of land by saying, this is red and generous and willing to give, and so on. And so they apply these concepts, and then the others understand perfectly what they mean. And their wives, the peasant women who control the potato seedlings, understand, so I need that variety to put in that field. See? It's an excellent means of communication. It cannot communicate in a scientific world, but it can communicate it. It's a vehicle of communication in the peasant world. Why? Because they work together, because they together construct the field, together they do the harvest, together they share the seeds for the different fields. Yeah, so a joint action is what creates understanding and makes keywords, red land or black land or whatever, make it into understandable keywords that even contain a kind of program, because a description of a specific piece of land with these terms contains a program. What should be done is to put more manure on it, because then we make it more black. Or to make it lower, you can lower the land from high to low, yeah, by planting trees, and so on and so forth. It contains a program. Now, so joint action is very crucial for constructing a shared meaning. Yeah, it gives meaning to the words, and it combines people. They understand each other. It brings even a kind of aesthetics. I mean, we have these beautiful paintings from Van Gogh, Vincent van Gogh, who painted many peasant men, peasant women. And in one of his letters, he wrote to his brother, he said, what I necessarily have to do is to show the peasant in action, because only through his or her action, yeah, we understand that. So, and this applies to themselves as well. And this action brings aesthetics, brings beauty, and it's what also makes people every now and then renders pride to their to what they are doing. Now, this principle, I would suggest, should travel to our own activities, to our action research, to the way we cooperate between institutions, and especially with peasant populations, with peasant movements. Yeah, we are to be in the action, translating the action, even to new language, communicate this language, check this language with the involved people. And this applies not only to big university as a whole, but to the research of each and everybody of us as social scientists. Yeah? In your research, you should always communicate back your results to the involved people, asking them, did I understand it well? This is a very crucial question, of course, in the construction of meaning, of joint meaning. It's an invitation for, as you said earlier in our discussion, invitation to dialogue. It is an invitation to ask the question, what exactly do you mean? It's the opposite of factional positions. Yeah, you use that word or you attach that meaning. I do not agree, I'm against. No, we should operate exactly the other way around. What exactly do you mean? And let's see if there are differences, if we can we can turn it into a research question and find out a promising solution. I stop here. It's very important that we continue discussion. Jun, thank you very much for your brilliant opening. And thank you for listening to this modest contribution.
Thank you both very much. This was actually quite interesting. We have about 10-15 minutes for anybody who would like to engage us, and then we have to vacate the room. I know you very well, but I can't remember your name. I'm sorry. Arabic. Okay.
Yeah. I would like to ask, like, it's more of a linguistic question, more of a linguistic question than anything, but more in the English language, it's quite peculiar, like, the dilemma I'm having, like, there's the word peasant and there's the word farmer, and they both, like, they have very similar meanings. But like, if you look at other countries, when you're doing this, there isn't a distinction of other European countries. The word peasant and farmer, they're basically related to the same word. When do you start using the word peasant? When do you start using the word farmer, and why? Like, why? You have to be careful with choosing words. Is there a specific reason, or is there an actual material difference that I'm not aware of?
Yeah, well, there are different levels in this. There are societies where, for instance, the word boer in the Netherlands, the Dutch expression traditional peasant, that is involved to peasant farmer, is not contested. Everybody understands what you mean. But for instance, in England, the word peasant is absolutely taboo. Yeah, they assume that, well, maybe there is still a peasant in Ireland. They consider Ireland to be the most backward part of the world. He's English. Yeah, but in England, surely not, they would say. On the other hand, in Latin America, throughout Latin America, being campesino, which means peasant over there, is a very obvious everyday life notion, and it's not contested, neither in universities. Like in France, paysan is just a normal expression. In many situations, if you use it, it is provocative. But the more so, since in the cultural offensive of governments, in programs for modernization, it said peasant is backwards, is inefficient, is not rational. We have to move to more to other ways of farming and to other identities. And then I'm aware that talking about peasant is a provocation, but a rightful provocation, I think, because it is contesting the imposed meaning of the state programs. And what will come out of this fight? Well, no, yes, you.
Sorry, no, I don't. I didn't mean to interrupt. First of all, thank you for your time. I just wanted to ask, I mean, it's a different question, but the question is, are terms, well, keywords, meant to be accurate or meant to empower or make us feel good? That's it's a tricky question, but I just want to pose it.
And then I have to say, well, it's tricky. For instance, in China, in 1709, there's a peasant rebellion that overthrows the country. It's like a fire. because then peasants negate to continue working in the communes and the production brigades. Yeah, they say it's even very provocative. They say we better sit down the street begging for some money than continue working in the fields. In a communist state, there's a communist ideology, that's the worst thing. But they said so, it was their better. And then what follows is that finally the state accepts, yeah, and introduces household responsibility system. That's the word. And in Chinese characters, nobody understands very well what it means. Yeah, it is not accurate. It is as inaccurate as saying this land is black, or this land is red, or it is dry, or it is hot, or whatever. Yeah,
So it's very.
yeah, it's and then in social practice itself and in social struggles, it was step by step meant of made clear what it should be and what it finally became. So this shows accurateness, yeah, and precise meanings are constructed through confrontations, through social struggles. And that, by the way, was also, yeah, why I like to use anyway the word peasant, even in context where it first implies confusion. Yeah, I understand that this as part of this process, but surely Jun can add to this as well.
I always admire the general coordinator of Via Campesina. As I said, is very important, if not the most important peasant movement in the world today. The general coordinator currently is a small French farmer. Her name is Morgan Moody. And recently she was just writing on something, and she said, it's very crucial for our fight for how we envision a positive future that we want to construct in recuperating the term peasant and asserting meaning on how we understood it. And I thought that's a bold kind and it's politics. And it's a bold kind of a political engagement on something, on making and remaking of the meanings of keywords in that sense. So that peasants are loaded, as you say, Via Campesina members in England and in the UK said, well, we support you to call peasants in all your societies, but we cannot use it in the UK for our own political reasons. But again, it goes back to meaning giving that is very political, but it's also history and context specific.
In the red?
Yes, can you ask?
I think my question might be a little premature maybe, but like to come back to like scholar activism, how can we make sure that we're not approaching it with like either utopianism, like utopianism ideas about it, or like with an elite like savior systems. Like
Being the savior of the world.
Yeah.
or like overly optimistic.
You see a lot of those brands of who claims scholar activism of tokenism on activism or tokenism on academics. It's also very much possible, or having the elitist it's like a feeling savior kind of way, both of which are giving bad names to what we describe as scholar activism. As we describe here, it's more of like scholar activism is the tradition that very broadly paraphrases Marx on the challenge is not only to interpret the world in various ways, but to change it and to change it into something better and here and now. And even that can be interpreted in different ways. My own understanding for that is scholar activism in my own narrow definition. Is that are those that take it a step further, those who commit not only to the idea,
I think we have to kind of
but to the very social movements.
No, that was an online.
Yeah, but are also committing to the very social movements that struggle for changing the world. It's not easy because those who want to pursue the method of working of scholar activism, or others call it activist scholarship, scholar activists, different ways of calling it. But the bottom line is that combining the best features of academic work, which is rigor, with the best features of political activism, which is relevance and sense of timing. If you are just academic and you wanted to interpret something, your sense of timing can be, different. When do you make an analytical closure? If you just don't mind the word out there, you say, I make analytical closure when I think my analysis is already perfect. So I cannot tell you when the timetable will be. If your sense of timing is related to political campaigns, for instance, then your sense of timing is calculated on the time that it will make the most political impact. Even when you know that it's still a little bit half-baked, but if I release it next week, then the bulldozer would have already flattened the land. But I want to release the study in the hope that it can stop the bulldozers from flattening the land. So your sense of timing is different from the two. So it has a lot of contradictions, but you try to navigate and balance the best features of both. Not easy. Very easy to say, but very difficult in practice. The other thing is that you have dual loyalties. You're loyal to the movements that have very different agendas, characters, and dynamics, but you're loyal to the universities that also have very different expectations from you. And you are, push and pull from this dual loyalties is would drive you crazy, and it's not easy. So between tokenism and feeling a savior and navigating the difficult contradictions of the two worlds, not easy, but it's worth it. The idea is that just doing it pure academic, oblivious of the world, can contribute significantly. But if you want to do more, then you get into the messy way or challenge of navigating the more complex terrain.
And I think what is very important from what you're saying, there are risks. And you should be willing and capable and knowledgeable about the risks that you take. And dare to take them. Because that's actually, whether intellectually in your research, going into raising questions that you didn't think about, or in your thinking about your engagement in the world in very deep ways. And people will think that your scholarship is tainted because you are involved politically and active. We have seen that so many times, and we need to be able to defend that. And to start with where you told us, we start with our own institutions, not necessarily the fiery, far away places. That's a very important place where we actually get things. So you've given us really like the yes, you can do. And yes, you can do. Absolutely. So, any other question? Last question, because we exhausted you today tremendously. I can't thank you enough for being with us. Both of you just made it possible to be able to think, yeah, there are dark moments, but we have to find a way.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you all very much for coming, and we'll keep you posted about our next session, inshallah. Oh my goodness. This is
And we're gonna read how to introduce. But okay.
and they that's why probably sorry.
When she was speaking UNDP, she said in Oslo,
She's a wonderful woman, but sadly enough, she only needs me for again, she was like
It was a pleasure talking to
and I hope, with or without Amr, I know Amr is dispensable in my life. That's the idea at this stage.
We might, I see, might impact on the insurance. You are the interested, right? Oh, I'm so. Wait, who wrote this? Now that was a Philip Mark. What is he done? No. You were the translator.
Yeah.
I don't read Arabic often. Master as increased motivation. Decide. So I can like you. The person who wrote it is trying to force me to read this language. And so Jimmy is interesting field. It's such an interesting field. And you probably get like this because like very means British. We are kind of it's here.